The air on Calyx 7 smelled like rust and desperation. Day One walked through the crowded market with his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, counting credits he didn't have. His ship needed parts. His stomach needed food. His life needed meaning. But that was a luxury he'd given up 3 years ago when Earth had thrown him out like garbage. The market sprawled across the lower decks of the station, a maze of stalls and cages where things were bought and sold that shouldn't be, weapons that violated 17 treaties, drugs that melted your brain in pretty colors, and people, always people. Day One tried not to look at the slave pens. He'd seen enough suffering in his 32 years, but something made him stop today. Maybe it was the unusual silence in one corner of the market. Maybe it was the way the crowd had gathered, whispering like they'd seen a ghost. He pushed through the aliens and found himself staring at the auction block. She stood there in chains, and Day One's breath caught in his throat. He'd heard stories about draconids, everyone had. Ancient beings that once ruled half the galaxy, before they vanished into legend. He'd never believed they were real. But there she was. Her scales were dull gray, lifeless from whatever they'd done to her. But Day One could see hints of color beneath, like oil on water. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with a tail that coiled around her legs. Her face was sharp angles and proud bones, reptilian but somehow beautiful. Her eyes swept across the crowd, burning with hate so pure it made people step back. Around her neck sat a suppression collar. Day One knew that design. He'd worked on similar tech back when he'd been desperate enough to take black market jobs. It blocked access to whatever made a being special. For a draconid, that meant her fire, her strength, her very essence. The auctioneer was a blob like Hurani, speaking through a translator box. Gentle beings you see before you, a prize beyond measure. A genuine draconid female, fully broken and compliant. Perfect for labor, perfect for... The creature's laugh was wet and obscene. Other purposes. We start bidding at 10,000 credits, the crowd muttered. That was a fortune for most people here. But Day One saw a few raising their hands. A Pelvorian merchant. A Krell enforcer with scars covering his face. A hooded figure who might have been anything. Day One's hand moved before his brain caught up. He raised it, and his voice came out steady even though his heart was hammering. 10,000! The draconid's eyes snapped to him. For a moment something flickered there, surprise maybe, or curiosity. The bidding climbed. 12,000, 15, 20. Day One kept raising his hand, spending credits he'd meant for ship repairs, for food, for fuel to get off this miserable station. The numbers climbed past reasonable, past sane, into stupid. At 35,000 credits, his entire account balance, Day One raised his hand one more time. The Pelvorian merchant hissed something in anger. The Krell enforcer cracked his knuckles, making it clear what he thought of human interference. The auctioneer was about to bring down the hammer when the station shuddered. Lights flickered. Somewhere an alarm started wailing. The crowd pressed toward the exits as a recorded voice announced a reactor fluctuation in Sector 7. In the chaos, the auctioneer hit the payment button. Day One's credit chip beeped. The transaction went through before anyone could counter-bid. He just bought a person. The thought made him sick. 2 hours later, Day One sat in his workshop aboard the Wildflower, his battered freighter, staring at the draconid woman now sitting on his workbench. She'd followed him without a word, her chains clinking with each step. Guards had shoved her toward him, laughing about humans and their stupid choices. Up close, she was even more imposing. Even weakened, even collared, she radiated danger like a reactor radiates heat. "My name is Hana," she said. Her voice was rough, like she hadn't used it in months. "You bought my freedom." She turned her head, exposing the collar. "Finish this." Day One swallowed. Removing a slave collar is a death penalty offense in 9 systems. Then you wasted your credits. Her eyes fixed on him, unblinking. "I would rather die free than live in chains. If you are too afraid, give me a weapon and leave." "I didn't say I wouldn't do it." Day One pulled out his toolkit, the good one he'd smuggled off Earth. "I just wanted you to know the risks." "Why?" The question hung in the air between them. Day One selected a neural spanner and a circuit probe. "Because nobody should be property, not you. Not anybody." Hana studied him for a long moment. "You are either very brave or very stupid." "I've been called both." He moved closer, gesturing to her neck. "This is going to take a while. The collar has failsafes. If I mess up, it could kill you. It could fry your neural system. It could explode and take both of us out. Then do not mess up." He almost laughed. Instead, he got to work. The collar was a masterpiece of cruelty. Whoever designed it had made sure that removing it would be nearly impossible. Day one traced the circuits with shaking hands, identifying the primary power source, the backup batteries, the neural suppressors that dug into Hana's spine. Each component had to be disabled in the right order, or everything would go wrong. Hours passed. Daewon's back ached from bending over his work. Sweat dripped into his eyes. His hands cramped around his tools. Hana sat perfectly still, barely breathing, her life in his hands. "Why were you there?" Daewon asked, partly to keep himself focused, partly because he needed to know. How does a Draconid end up in a slave market? "I was a flame warden," Hana said quietly. "A guardian of my people. I trusted someone I should not have trusted. They drugged me, collared me, and sold me. I have been property for 6 months. I'm sorry. Save your sorrow. Finish your work." Daewon disabled the 7th circuit. 3 more to go. "For what it's worth, I know what it's like to lose everything. Earth exiled me 3 years ago. I built an AI to help cure my sister's disease. AI research is illegal. They caught me, threw me out, and my sister died anyway. Your laws are foolish." "Yeah, they are." He smiled bitterly. "But nobody asked me." The 9th circuit clicked off. 1 more. Daewon could feel the tension in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. His hand trembled as he reached for the final connection. "If this kills me," Hana said, "know that I am grateful. 6 months of freedom is worth dying for. It's not going to kill you." Daewon didn't know if he was lying or not. He took a breath, said a prayer to gods he didn't believe in, and cut the final circuit. The collar sparked. Hana gasped. For a horrible moment, Daewon thought he'd failed. Then the collar fell away, hitting the metal floor with a clang that sounded like a prison door opening. Hana's scales began to shimmer. Color spread across her body like sunrise. Blues and purples and golds that hurt to look at directly. Her eyes brightened, becoming pools of molten amber. Power rolled off her in waves, making Daewon's tools rattle on the workbench. She could kill him now. Easily. One swipe of those clawed hands would split him open. One blast of fire would turn him to ash. Instead, she looked at him and asked, "Why did you help me?" Daewon met her gaze. "Because nobody should be property." Hana was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded once, a gesture that felt like a covenant. Outside the ship, alarms started blaring. Daewon's communication panel lit up with warnings. Bounty hunters had arrived at the station looking for stolen property. Looking for her. Hana rose to her feet, her full height making Daewon feel very small. "Can this ship fly?" "Barely." "Then we fly now." Daewon grabbed his tools and ran for the cockpit. Behind him, he heard Hana's claws clicking on the metal floor, and he wondered what he'd just started. He didn't know it yet, but he'd just changed the galaxy. The wildflower shook as it cleared the station's docking bay. Daewon's hands flew across the controls, pushing the old freighter's engines harder than they wanted to go. Behind them, 3 hunter ships peeled away from Calyx 7 in pursuit, their weapons already charging. How fast can this vessel travel? Hana stood behind the pilot's seat, one hand gripping the headrest to stay steady. Not fast enough. Daewon yanked the controls left, dodging a plasma bolt that scorched past their hull. Hold on to something. Hana didn't hold on. She stood perfectly balanced as Daewon threw the ship into a series of turns that would have made any sane pilot sick. The hunters stayed on them, professional and patient. They weren't trying to destroy the ship. They were hurting it. "They want to disable us," Hana said. "They want me alive." "Great, I feel so much better now." Daewon checked his instruments. The jump drive needed another 2 minutes to charge. They didn't have 2 minutes. He made a decision that was either brilliant or suicidal, and dove straight toward the nearest asteroid field. The hunters followed. Rocks tumbled through space, chunks of ice and iron left over from when this system was born. Daewon flew between them like he was threading a needle, the ship's proximity alarm screaming at him. One hunter clipped an asteroid and spun away, venting atmosphere. The other 2 kept coming. "Weapons?" Hana asked. "I've got 1 plasma cannon and it hasn't worked in 6 months. Then I suggest you fix it quickly." Daewon laughed despite everything. "Check the panel behind you." Red button marked dangerous. Hana found it and pressed. Nothing happened for 3 seconds. Then the wildflower's ancient plasma cannon coughed to life, spraying energy in a wide arc that caught one of the pursuing ships across its bow. The hunter peeled off, shield sparking. The last hunter fired a net of electromagnetic cables. They wrapped around the Wildflower's engines just as the jump drive finished charging. Day One hit the button without thinking. They jumped. The ship screamed. Metal groaned. Every warning light on the dashboard turned red. But when reality snapped back into focus, they were 3 light years away, drifting in empty space with the cables still wrapped around their engines. Day One let out a breath he'd been holding. "We're alive. Your ship is damaged. Yeah, but we're alive." He ran a diagnostic. "We've got maybe 6 hours before those cables fry the engines completely. I need to cut them off, which means I need to go outside. I will help." They suited up in the cargo bay. Day One had one human-sized EVA suit. For Hana, he cobbled together a breathing mask and magnetic boots. In the vacuum, with stars burning cold around them, they worked to cut away the electromagnetic cables. "You are skilled with tools," Hana said through the radio. "My dad was a mechanic, taught me everything he knew before he died." Day One severed another cable. "What about you? What do flame wardens do?" "We protect, we guard, we preserve the old ways." Hana's voice carried something heavy. "Or we did. There are not many of us left. What happened?" Hana was quiet while she ripped a cable free with her bare hands, something that should have been impossible even with her strength. "The galaxy happened. The Sovereign Pact happened. Species like mine are inconvenient. We remember too much. We know too much. So they erase us slowly, carefully, until one day we are only stories." Day One thought about that while they finished the repairs. When they climbed back inside and got the ship moving again, he made them both coffee from his limited supplies. Real coffee, the expensive kind he saved for emergencies. They sat in the common area, a cramped space with 2 chairs and a table. Hana held the cup carefully, her clawed fingers surprisingly delicate. "Tell me about your sister," she said. Day One hadn't expected that. He stared at his coffee. "Her name was Jiwoo. She was 5 years younger than me. When she was 16, she got a neural disease. The doctor said there was no cure, that she had maybe a year to live. So you built an artificial mind to help her. I built an AI that could analyze her brain faster than any human doctor. It found patterns, possible treatments, things that might work." His voice went flat. "But AI research is illegal on Earth. Has been for 100 years. They said machines can't be trusted with human lives. Your government caught you. They raided my lab, destroyed my work, put me on trial and exiled me to the outer colonies." Day One's hand tightened around his cup. "Jiwoo died 3 months later. I wasn't even allowed to come back for her funeral." Hana studied him with those amber eyes. "You broke your world's law to save someone you loved, and they punished you for it." "Yeah, your species confuses me. You have laws against helping each other. We have laws against a lot of things. Doesn't mean they make sense." Day One managed a weak smile. "What about draconids? What are your laws?" "We have only one law that matters. Debt must be repaid." Hana set down her cup. "You bought my freedom. You removed my collar. You gave me back my life. I owe you a debt that can only be repaid with my life." "No," Day One said it firmly. "I didn't free you so you'd owe me. That defeats the whole point. You do not understand. A life debt is sacred, I understand plenty. You're not my property and you're not my servant. I helped you because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted you to owe me." Hana leaned back, something like surprise crossing her face. "You refuse my debt?" "I refuse the idea that kindness has to be repaid. You don't owe me anything. You're free. That means you get to choose what you do next." For a long moment, Hana just stared at him. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. It was small and looked unpracticed, like she hadn't done it in a long time. "You are a strange human. Day One. I get that a lot." They talked through the night cycle, sharing stories of their broken lives. Hana told him about draconid culture, about the flame wardens who guarded ancient knowledge, about her clutch mates scattered across the galaxy. Day One told her about Earth, about humanity's struggle to be taken seriously by the older species, about the way humans kept pushing forward even when the universe pushed back. "Your people do not give up," Hana observed. "We're too stupid to know when we're beaten." Day One grinned. "It's kind of our thing." "I think it is more than that." Hana's expression turned thoughtful. "I think your people do not give up because you understand something others have forgotten, that every being deserves a choice. You're giving us too much credit. Most humans are just trying to survive." Survival is a choice too. Before Daewon could respond, the ship's alarm shrieked. He ran to the cockpit with Hana right behind him. The scanner showed 5 ships dropping out of hyperspace around them, forming a perfect cage. The hunters found us, Hana said. That's not possible. We jumped 3 light years. Daewon checked the readings again. His blood went cold. Those aren't bounty hunter ships. Those are sovereign pact enforcers. They sent military vessels for one escaped slave. They didn't send them for a slave. Daewon's mind raced, putting pieces together. They sent them for a Draconid. They're scared of you. The communication panel crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect human standard. Unregistered vessel. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. The Draconid prisoner will be returned to lawful custody. Resistance will result in destruction. Hana's hands curled into fists. I will not go back. Daewon looked at the 5 military ships surrounding them. The Wildflower had 1 broken plasma cannon in dreams. They had enough firepower to crack a moon. He should surrender. He should be smart. He should think about survival. Instead, he thought about his sister dying while he sat in a cell. He thought about laws that protected power instead of people. He thought about Hana's face when the collar fell away. How do you feel about really bad odds? He asked. Hana's smile was all teeth. Show me what humans do when they are too stupid to give up. Daewon's hands moved across the controls. Hold on. This is going to be insane. The Wildflower's engines roared to life, and they shot forward directly at the largest pack ship, a move so reckless that it took the enforcers a full second to react. 1 second was all Daewon needed. They dove under the warship's belly, so close that Hana could have reached out and touched it. The warship fired but hit nothing but empty space. Daewon was already moving, weaving between the other ships, using them as shields against each other. They will not risk destroying their own vessels, Hana said, understanding his plan. That's what I'm counting on. Daewon pushed the engines past their safety limits. But we can't run forever. Any ideas? Hana's eyes gleamed. Yes, get me close to that ship. She pointed at the nearest enforcer. What are you going to do? Something I have not done in 6 months. Her scales began to shimmer with heat. Something they should have remembered to fear. Daewon brought them alongside the enforcer vessel. Hana moved to the airlock, and Daewon realized with horror what she planned. You can't survive in vacuum. Watch me. She cycled the airlock and jumped into space. Daewon watched through the viewport as Hana drifted toward the Sovereign Pact enforcer ship. She moved through vacuum like she was swimming through water, her scales glowing brighter with each second. He'd read that Draconids could survive in space for short periods, but reading about it and seeing it were different things. The enforcer crew must have seen her too. Their weapons swiveled to track her. But before they could fire, Hana opened her mouth and breathed fire, except it wasn't fire. Not really. It was plasma, raw fusion heat that burned hotter than most stars. The beam struck the enforcer's shields and they collapsed like paper in a furnace. Metal glowed red, then white, then simply ceased to exist as Hana carved through the ship's hull. Impossible, Daewon whispered. The enforcer ship spun away, atmosphere venting, crew scrambling to seal the breach. The other 4 ships opened fire, but Hana was already moving, twisting through space with impossible grace. She grabbed onto the Wildflower's hull as Daewon brought the ship around to retrieve her. By the time she cycled back through the airlock, the pack ships were regrouping, but their confidence was shaken. They'd expected an easy capture. They hadn't expected prey that could bite back. Daewon hit the jump drive. The universe twisted and they escaped. 3 jumps later, they stopped in an empty system to let the ship's engines cool. Daewon found Hana in the common area, her scales still faintly glowing, her breathing heavy but steady. You just took on a military warship by yourself. I am a flame warden. She said it simply, like it explained everything. Maybe it did. You could have died. Better than going back in chains. Hana looked at him. You risked your life for me, again. Yeah, well, we're even now. You saved us just as much as I saved you. Daewon sat down heavily.
Speaking of which, how did they find us?
We should have been impossible to track. They put a tracer in the collar. Hana touched her neck where the device had been. I can still feel it, a small piece they left behind. They will always be able to find me. Then we remove it. It is embedded in my spine. Removing it would require surgery. I cannot survive outside a medical facility. Daewon thought about that problem while he ran more diagnostics on the ship. They needed fuel, food, and parts. Most importantly, they needed a place to hide while they figured out their next move. I know a place, he said finally. An old mining colony called Haven's Rest. It's off the main trade routes. The people there don't ask questions and don't cooperate with authorities. You have been there before? I've been to a lot of places in 3 years. You learn which stations look the other way. He set the course. It's a 2-day jump. Try to get some rest. But neither of them could rest. They'd escaped twice now, but the pact wouldn't stop. Organizations like that didn't let go once they'd decided you were a problem. During the long flight, Hana taught Daewon about Draconid combat techniques. Not that he could breathe fusion fire, but he learned how to think like a warrior, how to spot weaknesses, how to turn an enemy's strength against them. In return, Daewon taught her about human engineering, showing her how human ships were designed differently than other species, built to be repaired and modified with whatever materials were available. Humans build things that can be fixed, Hana observed. We have to. Nobody else will sell us the good stuff. Daewon tightened a bolt on the plasma cannon, trying to make it more reliable. The pact keeps humanity locked out of the advanced technology trade. They say we're too violent, too unpredictable. Are you? Probably. But we're also the only species that'll take a ship held together with spare parts and prayer, and fly it into a fleet of warships to save somebody we just met. He grinned at her. That's got to count for something. Hana made a sound that might have been a laugh. You're insane. Yeah, I get that a lot. They arrived at Haven's Rest during the station's night cycle. The old mining colony was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, its docks hidden in the shadows. Daewon paid the docking fee with credits he'd stolen from the bounty hunters during their first escape, and they made their way into the station proper. Haven's Rest was exactly the kind of place Daewon remembered. Dark corridors, suspicious eyes, and the kind of quiet that meant everyone was minding their own business because they had secrets to keep. Perfect. They found a medtech in the lower levels. A Saluvian with 6 arms and a reputation for discretion. She looked at the tracer embedded in Hana's spine and shook her head. This is Sovereign Pact military-grade tracking technology, the medtech said. Removing it incorrectly will kill her. Removing it correctly will also probably kill her. It's designed that way. Can you do it or not? Daewon asked. I can do it. Whether she survives is another question. The Saluvian examined Hana more closely. You're Draconid. Your physiology is remarkably resilient. You might have a 40% chance. I will take those odds, Hana said. Wait. Daewon grabbed her arm. 40%? That's barely better than a coin flip. It is better than living with a chain around my neck, even a chain I cannot see. Hana's eyes were calm. I have already decided. The surgery took 3 hours. Daewon paced in the waiting area, his mind running through every worst-case scenario. He'd only known Hana for a few days, but the thought of her dying on an operating table made his chest tight. When the medtech finally emerged, her expression was unreadable. She lives. The tracer is out, but she will need several days to recover. Daewon sagged with relief. While Hana recovered, Daewon explored the station and gathered information. What he learned made him wish he'd stayed ignorant. The Sovereign Pact was moving, not just hunting for one escaped Draconid, but preparing for something larger. Station gossip spoke of fleets gathering, of quiet military buildup, of species disappearing from their homeworlds with no explanation given. In a dingy bar on the station's lower level, Daewon met an old information broker named Tae-sung, another human exile who traded in secrets. You're asking dangerous questions, Tae-sung said over a glass of something that glowed faintly blue. I need dangerous answers. The Pact is cleaning house. They've been doing it for centuries, but they're accelerating. Tae-sung leaned closer. Any species that shows too much potential, too much independence, gets marked. First they undermine the economy. Then they create internal conflicts. Finally they offer to help, and by the time that species realizes what's happening, it's too late. And humanity? We're on the list. Tae-sung's smile was bitter. We've been on it for 50 years. Why do you think Earth has such strict laws? Why do you think they exiled scientists like you? The Pact prefers us divided and weak. Daewon felt cold. How do you know all this? Because I used to work for them. Before I learned what they really were. Tae-sung finished his drink. Your Draconid friend? The pact eliminated 90% of her species over the last 200 years, made it look like natural decline, like they were just fading away. But it was genocide, slow and careful. Why? Because draconids, remember? They lived for centuries and they passed down knowledge. They knew what the pact was doing and they started warning others. Tae-sung stood to leave. You saved one of the last flame wardens. That makes you a problem. Watch your back. When Daewon returned to the medical facility, he found Hana awake and sitting up despite the medtech's protests. Her scales had regained their full color, shimmering blues and golds. You look better, he said. I feel whole. She touched her neck where the tracer had been. For the first time in 6 months, I am not being watched. About that, Daewon told her everything Tae-sung had said. About the pact's slow genocide. About humanity being on their list. About how they'd all been played. Hana listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. I suspected, she said finally, but I had no proof. None of my people did. That was their brilliance. They made us think we were dying naturally. What do? We. Hana looked at him. This is not your fight, Daewon. You freed me. Your debt, if any existed, is more than paid. I release you from any obligation. I'm not doing this because of obligation. Daewon met her eyes. I'm doing this because it's right. They're coming for humanity next. For Earth. For people like my sister who just wanted to live. I can't stop them alone, but maybe together we have a chance. You would fight the Sovereign Pact? An organization that controls half the galaxy? Yeah, I would. He smiled despite everything. I told you humans are too stupid to know when we're beaten. Hana studied him and something shifted in her expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. There are others. Scattered survivors of my people. If I could reach them, if I could bring them together, then let's reach them. It will be dangerous. Everything worthwhile is. Hana stood, still a bit unsteady but strong enough. She extended her hand, claws retracted, palm open. A human gesture she must have learned. Then we fight together. Not because of debt, but by choice. Daewon took her hand. Her grip was warm and firm. By choice, he agreed. They left Haven's Rest 3 days later with a list of locations where other draconids might be hiding. Their first stop would be a rogue planet in the Outer Veil, a place so remote that most maps didn't include it. As the wildflower jumped into hyperspace, Daewon wondered if they were flying toward hope or destruction. Probably both, knowing his luck. The rogue planet had no name. It drifted through space between stars, a frozen world that should have been dead but somehow wasn't. As the wildflower approached, Daewon's scanners picked up something impossible, a heat signature deep beneath the ice. This is it, Hana said quietly. The last sanctuary. They descended through clouds of frozen methane, following coordinates Hana remembered from before her capture. The ship's exterior hull crackled with ice as they dropped lower. And Daewon was starting to think they'd made a terrible mistake when the ice simply vanished. They'd passed through a shield barrier, invisible from above. Below them lay a valley carved into the planet's crust, glowing with geothermal heat. And in that valley stood structures unlike anything Daewon had ever seen. Buildings that seemed grown rather than built, all elegant curves and crystalline spires. Welcome to the last home of the draconids, Hana said. They landed in a clearing where 3 other draconids waited, weapons drawn. When they saw Hana emerge from the ship, one of them dropped their weapon and ran forward. Hana! We thought you were dead. I was as good as dead, Gitai. Hana embraced the male draconid, who was broader than her but moved with the same lethal grace. This human saved me. His name is Daewon. Gitai looked at Daewon with obvious suspicion. A human? Here? He has earned the right to be here. I would stake my life on it. That seemed to carry weight. The other draconids lowered their weapons, though they watched Daewon carefully as Hana led him deeper into the sanctuary. The valley held fewer than 10,000 draconids. Daewon had expected that number to feel huge, but seeing them gathered made him realize how small it was, an entire species reduced to a single valley on a hidden planet. They were brought before the elders, 5 ancient draconids who carried themselves with the weight of centuries. The eldest, a massive male whose scales had faded to silver with age, studied Daewon with eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. I am Jun-ho, First Warden, he said. Hana says you freed her from slavery. Why? Daewon had prepared for this question during the flight. Because slavery is wrong. Many things are wrong. Most do not risk their lives to correct them. Then maybe more people should start. Day-Wan met the Elder's gaze. I've learned things. About the Sovereign Pact. About what they're doing to your people and mine. I think we can help each other. The Elders conferred in their own language, a series of clicks and harmonics that made the air vibrate. Finally, Junho spoke again. You may stay, human. But understand this, we are survivors, not warriors. We hide here because fighting brought us only death. We will not risk the last of our people on hope and human stubbornness. Over the following days, Day-Wan explored the sanctuary. The Draconids had technology that made the Pact's warships look primitive, force fields that could stop anything, power sources that tapped into quantum vacuum energy, weapons that could shatter moons, all of it sitting unused while they hid. Why don't you fight? Day-Wan asked Gite one evening. The Draconid had warmed to him after learning how Day-Wan had removed Hana's collar. Because we tried fighting before. 500 years ago we had fleets, armies, power. We thought we could stand against the Pact. Gite's expression darkened. They didn't fight us openly. They infiltrated our worlds, turned us against each other, made us destroy ourselves. By the time we realized what was happening, we were broken. Now we survive by hiding. But you can't hide forever. We can hide long enough to outlive the Pact. We are patient. They are not. That patience frustrated Day-Wan, but he understood it. These people had been hunted for centuries. Fear became wisdom when every battle ended in loss. Hana felt differently. She argued with the Elders daily, her voice echoing through the crystalline halls. Day-Wan watched from a distance as she paced before them, scales flashing with anger. We are dying anyway, she said. Our birth rate declines every year. Our gene pool narrows. In another century, there will be too few of us to sustain a population. Hiding is just slow extinction, and fighting is fast extinction. Junho replied calmly. We have chosen the path that gives us the longest time. Time for what? To watch our children grow up in caves, terrified of the sky? To let other species suffer the same fate we did? It is not our responsibility to save other species. Then what is our responsibility? Hana's frustration boiled over. To survive without purpose? To live without meaning? I was a flame warden. I swore to protect, not hide. The arguments went in circles. The Elders were immovable, and Hana grew more restless each day. Day-Wan spent his time in the sanctuary's workshops, learning from their technology. He built things, modified things, merged Draconid technology with human engineering principles. The Draconid engineers watched him with interest, particularly when he took apart a complex energy weapon and rebuilt it using half the parts. Your approach is crude, one engineer said. Crude but effective. Day-Wan held up the modified weapon. Your design is beautiful, but it requires materials most species don't have. Mine can be built with common components. That's the difference between our species. You make perfect things. We make things that work. The engineer considered this. Perhaps there is wisdom in that. 3 weeks into their stay, everything changed. Day-Wan was working in his workshop when the alarms began. Not the sanctuary's alarms, but his ships. The Wildflower had detected ships entering the system, dozens of them, all bearing Sovereign Pact signatures. He ran to find Hana and Gite already suiting up for battle. The Elders had gathered in the command center, watching holographic displays that showed the approaching fleet. How did they find us? Junho demanded. The medtech at Haven's Rest, Day-Wan realized with sick horror. She must have sold us out. It does not matter how. They are here. Gite checked his weapons. We must evacuate. To where? Hana's voice was sharp. This is our last sanctuary. If we run now, we run forever, scattered and alone. The Pact wins. If we fight, we die, Junho said. We die either way. Hana turned to face the Elders. At least if we fight, we die with purpose. We show the galaxy that the Draconids still have fire. One gesture of defiance will not change anything. You're wrong. Day-Wan stepped forward. All eyes turned to him. I've been working with your engineers. Your technology is incredible, but you've forgotten something. You've forgotten how to make do with what you have. You've forgotten how to adapt. Explain, Junho commanded. The Pact expects you to fight like Draconids. Honorable, powerful, direct. They've planned for that. But what if you fight like humans? Day-Wan pulled up his own holographic display, showing modifications he'd been working on. Your shields can be reconfigured. Your weapons can be miniaturized. We can't win a straight battle, but we can make them bleed. We can broadcast it. We can show every species in the galaxy that the Pact can be hurt. To what end? Junho asked, to inspire others. The Pact controls half the galaxy because everyone thinks resistance is hopeless. But if we prove it's not, if we show that a handful of survivors can bloody their nose, others will start to question, to resist, or they will simply send more ships and finish us. Maybe, probably. Daewon smiled grimly. But I've learned something about your people these past weeks. You talk about survival, but what you really want is to matter again. You want your existence to mean something. Well, here's your chance, the elders argued among themselves. Daewon could see the fear in their eyes, but also something else. A spark of the warriors they used to be. Finally, Junho spoke. If we do this, many will die. Many will die if we run too, Hana said. At least this way we die standing. Very well. Junho's scales brightened, color returning after centuries of dimness. We fight. But we fight your way, human. Show us how to be crude and effective. The sanctuary exploded into activity. Daewon coordinated with the Draconid engineers, implementing modifications at frantic speed. They stripped the shields from buildings and mounted them on small fighter craft. They broke down massive weapons into portable units. They rigged traps and ambushes throughout the valley. And Daewon sent out a message broadcast on every frequency humanity used. This is Daewon, exiled from Earth 3 years ago. I'm on a rogue planet in the Outer Veil, and the Sovereign Pact is about to attack a group of Draconid survivors. They're attacking because the Draconids know the truth about what the Pact really is. They're attacking because they're afraid. I'm staying to fight. If you've ever felt like humanity deserves a chance to prove itself, if you've ever wanted to tell the Pact to go to hell, come to these coordinates. Come now. Come ready to fight. He didn't expect anyone to answer, but as the Pact fleet entered orbit, as Draconid warriors prepared for their last stand, Daewon's comm panel lit up with hundreds of responses. Human ships, emerging from jump points across the system, freighters, miners, smugglers, merchants. Every human with a ship and a grudge against the Pact was coming. Hana looked at the display, then at Daewon. Your people are insane. Yeah, Daewon said, grinning despite his fear. We really are. The battle was about to begin, and for the first time in centuries, the Draconids weren't facing it alone. The Sovereign Pact fleet numbered 47 warships, each one capable of glassing a planet. They hung in orbit around the rogue world like a noose tightening, their weapons charged and ready. Inside the sanctuary, Daewon stood in the command center surrounded by Draconid warriors and human volunteers who'd answered his call. His hands shook as he looked at the tactical display. This was insane. They were going to die, but they were going to die on their feet. Human vessels report ready, said Gite, who'd taken to coordinating the defense. 237 ships. Most are civilian craft. Civilian craft with weapons strapped to them. Added a human woman named Kyung-suk, a cargo hauler who'd attached mining lasers to her ship. We're not pretty, but we'll hurt. Draconid forces ready, Hana reported. She wore full battle armor now, scales gleaming like polished gems, all warriors armed and positioned. Junho stepped forward and the command center fell silent. The ancient Draconid looked at Daewon with an expression that held centuries of weight. Human Daewon, you have brought us to this moment. You have reminded us what we were, what we can be again. He placed a clawed hand on Daewon's shoulder. Whatever happens today, know that you have earned the title Flame Friend. No outsider has ever been so honored. Daewon didn't know what to say. He settled for a nod. The Pact fleet moved first. A single ship descended toward the planet, broadcasting a message. Unregistered settlement, you are in violation of Sovereign Pact quarantine laws. Surrender all Draconid individuals and disperse. You have 1 hour to comply. Daewon keyed the communication himself. His voice went out on every frequency, meant not just for the Pact but for every listening device in range. This is the human Daewon. We refuse. The Draconids are not criminals. They're survivors of a genocide you pretend never happened, and we're done pretending with you. Silence. Then the Pact fleet opened fire. The battle began with light. Massive energy beams punched through the atmosphere, targeting the shield generators Daewon had repositioned. But the generators weren't where the Pact expected. Their first volley hit empty ice while the real shields flickered to life, deflecting the second wave of fire. Now, Daewon shouted. Draconid fighters launched from hidden bays carved into the ice. They were small, fast, and equipped with human-modified weapons. Behind them came the human fleet. A swarm of mismatched ships that moved with no tactical formation. Because they'd never trained together, it shouldn't have worked. It shouldn't have even slowed the pack down. But it did. The human ships flew like maniacs, breaking every rule of engagement. They used asteroids as shields, boosted toward the enemy at suicide speeds, and fired weapons that shouldn't have been ship-mounted. A mining vessel rammed a pack destroyer. Shields overloaded, destroying both ships in a blast of light. Humans are crazy, Gite shouted, watching the display with horror and awe. That's what I've been trying to tell you, Daewon said, coordinating the defense from the command center. His fingers flew across the controls, directing ships, adjusting shields, calling out targets. In space, Hana led a wing of Draconid fighters straight into the packed fleet's formation. They moved like dancers, weaving between capital ships, their modified weapons punching through shields and surgical strikes. When a packed fighter locked onto her tail, Hana simply turned her ship around and breathed fire through the vacuum. Superheated plasma that melted the enemy craft. All units, focus fire on the command ship, Daewon ordered. Bring it down and they'll lose coordination. That ship has shields that could stop a moon, Kyung-suk protested. Then we hit it with everything at once. Daewon pulled up targeting data. Draconid fighters, can you get to these coordinates? Yes, Hana's voice came through, steady despite the chaos around her. Human ships, I need you to make a run at the command ship. Full speed, all weapons. Draw their fire. That's suicide, someone said. Yeah, it is. Who's with me? The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then Kyung-suk laughed, wild and free. Hell, I was going to die broke anyway. At least this way I go out making a point. All human vessels form up on me, Daewon said, even though he was still on the ground. On my mark, we fly straight at them. Draconid fighters, when their shields are focused on the humans, you hit them from behind. Understood? Understood, Hana confirmed. This is insane, Gite muttered. Welcome to humanity, Daewon replied. The human fleet charged. 237 ships, most of them barely armed, flying directly at a capital ship that outmassed them all combined. The packed command ship's weapons swiveled to meet them, shields concentrated forward. Half the human ships died in the first volley. The rest kept coming. They fired everything they had. Mining lasers, plasma cutters, missiles meant for clearing asteroids, even a few who just rammed the shields at full speed. Their ships exploding against the barrier like fireworks. And while the pact focused on the suicidal humans in front of them, Hana and her fighters struck from behind. Their modified weapons hit the exposed rear shields at precise points Daewon had calculated. The shields flickered, weakened, and collapsed. For just 3 seconds, the massive command ship was vulnerable. 3 seconds was enough. Every remaining human ship fired at once. The Draconid fighters unleashed fusion fire. The combined assault punched through the hull deep into the ship's core. The packed command ship exploded. The shockwave knocked nearby vessels off course. Debris scattered across the battlefield. And for one moment, everything stopped. Then the cheering started. We got the bastard. Kyung-suk's voice rang across the comm. We actually got the bastard. But Daewon was already looking at the tactical display. The packed fleet was reforming, and they were angry now. This wasn't a cleanup operation anymore. This was war. All ships fall back to the planet, Daewon ordered. We can't win in open space. The survivors retreated to the atmosphere using the rogue planet's storms as cover. The packed fleet followed, descending through the clouds with weapons blazing. They're going to orbital bombard us, Junho said calmly. Once they clear the storms, nothing will survive. Then we don't let them clear the storms. Daewon pulled up another display, this one showing the planet's weather patterns. See these thermal vents? They're what keeps this valley habitable. If we overload them, they'll create a storm that'll tear apart anything in atmosphere. That will also destroy the sanctuary. The sanctuary's already lost. But if we do this right, we can take most of their fleet with us. Daewon looked at the Elder. And we can broadcast the whole thing. Show the galaxy what it takes to stop the pact, make them famous. Make them martyrs. Make them scared. Junho smiled, and it was the smile of a warrior who'd finally found his death worth dying for. Do it! Daewon and the Draconid engineers worked frantically, rigging the thermal vents to overload. Above them, the battle raged. Human ships darted through the storm clouds, leading packed vessels into ambushes. Draconid warriors fought in close combat, their ancient strength meeting modern weapons. Hana landed her fighter and ran to the command center, her armor scorched and smoking. The fleet is pushing hard. We have maybe 10 minutes, that's all we need. Day 1 finished the last connection. Everybody to the ships now. The evacuation was chaos. Draconids grabbed what they could. Their entire civilization reduced to what fit in fighter craft. Humans helped, carrying equipment, guiding younglings, working alongside the species they'd fought with. Day 1 waited until everyone else was aboard before running to the Wildflower. Hana was already in the cockpit firing up the engines. "The vents?" she asked. "They'll blow in 3 minutes." They lifted off with dozens of other ships climbing through the storm toward space. Behind them, the thermal vents reached critical mass. Superheated gas erupted from the planet's core, creating a storm that turned the atmosphere into a weapon. Pack ships caught in the blast were torn apart. Those that tried to climb out of the atmosphere found human and draconid fighters waiting. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was a massacre, and for once, the Pact was on the receiving end. When the storm finally cleared, 17 Pact ships remained from the original 47. They retreated, jumping away with their shields damaged and their pride shattered. The survivors gathered at a rally point 3 light-years away. They'd lost half the human fleet. A third of the Draconid warriors were dead. The sanctuary was gone, buried under ice and fire, but they'd won. "We bloodied them," Gitai said, looking at the tactical reports with something like disbelief. "We actually hurt the Sovereign Pact." "And the galaxy saw it," Day 1 added, watching the communication channels. Already the battle was spreading across every network. Video of human ships ramming Pact destroyers, images of Draconids breathing fire in space, proof that the mighty Pact could bleed. Across the galaxy, other species were watching. The ones who'd been told to submit, to accept their place, to know their limits. They watched and they started to ask questions. In the Wildflower's cockpit, Hana and Day 1 sat in exhausted silence. "Your people are insane," Hana said finally. "You said that already." "It bears repeating." She looked at him. "Also, they are magnificent." Day 1 laughed, too tired to do anything else. "What now?" "Now we rebuild. We gather allies. We show others what we showed the Pact today." Hana's scales shimmered with determination. "We start a revolution.